Good morning. And if you remember, last time we were reading our book, poor Mrs. McDonald was flat out on the floor. She fainted at the thought of what had happened to poor Mr. Wiggles. So, here we go. Flat out. Rosie ran off and returned with Mr. Noblet. "What's going down, guys?" he asked. "Well," began Rosie. Gamble stamped on her foot to shut her up and told his version of what happened. By the time he'd finished his story about how the guinea pig had gone for Mrs. McDonald's throat and he'd had to beat it off with a doughnut, Mrs. McDonald had woken up. "Oh, where am I?" she said in a floaty voice. "Where's Mr. Wiggles? Who shaved him?" "Crumbs," said Mr. Noblet, biting his lip. "She's a bit delirious. Did you see anything, Miss Clegg?" From over Miss Clegg's shoulder, I could see that she'd used her phone to take a photograph of Mrs. McDonald laying on the floor. She was just posting it on Facebook with the tag, "My teacher's working flat out." "Nope," she said, sliding her phone into her pocket. "I was in the loo." Mr. Noblet looked like he'd just swallowed something sour. "Covered in glitter and feathers," said Mrs. McDonald, her head lolling around. "Oh, you poor thing," said Mr. Noblet, helping Mrs. McDonald to her feet. "You've been working too hard. Home to rest, I think. I'll take your class. Miss Clegg, a hand?" Miss Clegg turned loudly and huffed over to the strict Mrs. McDonald. Together they helped her out of the classroom. When they'd gone, Rosie Taylor turned on Gamble and angrily pushed her hair back. "You're lying, and I'm going to tell Mr. Noblet what really happened." "Try it. I'll smash your teeth out," said Gamble. "Yeah, Rosie," said Jane, "button it or else." I mentally added threatening people to the list of things Jane had started to do since I'd given her a piece of deadly doughnut on Monday. "Maybe we should try to get Mr. Wiggles back," I said. "You know, Mrs. McDonald." "Well, that's a good idea," said Gamble. "You still owe me a doughnut, though. This one's covered in guinea pig spit, even if I wanted to eat it." And with that, he threw the remaining lump into the bin. Even though the doughnut had been in Gamble's armpit and Mr. Wiggles' mouth, I felt my stomach muscles clench. Binning a doughnut? Oh, what an awful crime. It's like taking a beautiful painting and blowing your nose with it. What a strange comparison. And don't forget, you owe me 49, Jane said, fluttering her eyelashes. Added to the one I was desperate for myself, I was now on minus 51 doughnuts. I bit my lip. There was another problem. My £20 was in Mrs. McDonald's desk, and if she's gone home, how could she go to the shop to get them for me? Things were getting worse by the second. For the rest of the day, Mr. Noblet got us to design a machine we'd like to invent. This is the kind of doss-about lesson that head teachers always give you so they can sit at the front and get on with paperwork. By the way, I don't want to sound big-headed, but my machine was brilliant. It was called the Multi-Blaster. All you had to do was zap something with a laser, and it made hundreds of copies of it. I thought it would be useful for getting all the extra doughnuts I needed. Rosie Taylor's invention was a set of X-ray glasses that could see through walls and round corners. Kevin Harrison invented a special sick bag that turned your puke into money. Gamble designed a new missile for blowing up cows. Don't even ask. While Jane came up with a handheld device that could tell you where your boyfriend was at all times. I wasn't sure I liked her invention. The room was totally quiet, apart from Gamble talking to Miss Clegg. "What are you going to do tonight, miss?" "Have you got a date with your boyfriend, miss?" "It's none of your business," said Miss Clegg. Have you got a boyfriend, miss?" I bet you have. You're not as beautiful as Mrs. McDonald, but there must be someone out there that fancies you, miss. If you must know, Darren, I'm going to the supermarket. Now, can you please colour in those cows' brains and get this over with? Gamble stood up. At first, Miss Clegg looked like she was going to stop him, but she just huffed out her cheeks and gave up. He walked over to me. Hey, Roman, want to hang out after school? I said, concentrating on my machine and hoping he'd get bored and go away. Go and bother someone else. I've got this awesome idea to get the doughnuts. Yuck, said Rosie. Something stinks round here. Oh, shut it, Fartburger, said Gamble. Oh, you're gross, Rosie hissed. I'm going to sharpen my pencil. Don't you dare touch my stuff with your greasy fingers while I'm gone. Spying on everyone else's work on the way, Rosie walked the long way round to the bin. As soon as she stopped, Gamble flung one of her rubbers at her. It smacked her on the back of the head, which caused her to drop her pencil sharpener into the bin. Bullseye, he said, rushing over to his place. High five, Miss Clegg. Miss Clegg looked at his hand like he just used it to clean out a toilet. No throwing in class, Darren, she said unconvincingly. Hey, something groovy out there, guys, said Mr. Noblet, glancing up from his work. Gamble glared at Rosie. She pursed her lips, picked some imaginary bits of rubber out of her hair and reached into the bin. What happened next was incredible. There was a clang as the bin flew onto its side, and after 1 millisecond, Rosie let out a deafening scream and shot into the air, waving her hand about. It took me a moment to realise there was something hanging off the end of her finger. It was something very fat, very pink, and very bald, with all kinds of stuff stuck to it. Mr. Wiggles! He must have sniffed out the doughnut and crawled into the bin after it. Get it off me! Rosie shrieked, swinging the fat, bald guinea pig round and round her head. Mr. Wiggles hung on, his teeth sunk deeper into her flesh. Put him back in the cage, I cried. This was my chance to finally do something good. Chop her finger off, called out Gamble. Don't they carry rabies? Asked Miss Clegg. Oh, I feel sick, said Kevin, the volcano Harrison, turning a very funny shade of green. Rosie was going completely nuts by now, flapping her hands up and back and down and round, so the guinea pig was a total blur. I hate rats, I hate rats, I hate rats, she squealed. Stay still, said Mr. Noblet, grabbing Mr. Wiggles and trying to pull him off Rosie's finger. The guinea pig must have let go because all of a sudden Mr. Noblet was stumbling backwards, holding holding Mr. Wiggles up in the air like he was the World Cup. But then he slipped on the lumpy puddle that Kevin the volcano had just created on the floor. Mr. Noblet's feet flew up in the air above his head and he tumbled over in a heap. Mr. Wiggles flopped onto the floor and zigzagged back across the classroom as fast as his fat little body could manage. When he reached Rosie, she actually went to stomp on him, but Gamble rugby tackled her out of the way just in time. Meanwhile, Mr. Wiggles grabbed the rest of the doughnut from the floor by the bin and squeezed through a gap in the skirting board, dragging the doughnut behind him. For a moment, the only sound in the room was Rosie sobbing. Awesome, said Gamble. Now, that is the end of today's chapter, and tomorrow's part of the book is called After School, and the chapter is called I Am Forced to Try Out a New Way of Shopping. Well, we know that, don't we? Right, so I'll see you tomorrow. Have a good day. Bye.